Our next presenter is Hailiang Chen. He was a PhD student here. His advisor, co-advisor was actually today, and I guess the fake advisor was Jeffrey Hu. He is okay. So without further ado, Hailiang.
Thank you very much. I'm Hailiang Chen, and it's very glad to be here again. I came to Purdue in 2007, so that's more than 12 years. And I graduated in 2012, and after I graduated, I'm from China, and I went back to Hong Kong, and my first job is at the City University of Hong Kong, and this year I moved to the University of Hong Kong. And today the topic is about social executive. So my PhD dissertation here at Purdue was related with social media, and as Mohammed mentioned, my co-supervisor Prabhu Day and Jeffrey Wu. So in today's talk, before I talk about the paper on social executive, I want to talk a little bit more about my dissertation first, since this is a DFEST conference, and it's empirical work. So so Prabhu Day is in the WITS community traditionally, but I'm very lucky to have the opportunity to work with him, and we did some of the empirical work on social media. So I want to give you some brief introduction of my dissertation and the work I did together with Prabhu Day. So my PhD dissertation is essays on impact of social media in two contexts. One is marketing, the other is the financial markets. And I have two essays, and luckily both got published. And although it takes a long time to complete my dissertation, and so since I came here in 2007, and at that time was social media started to get popular, and naturally since the IS field is kind of we catch on fashion a lot, and a lot of those topics we studied quite related with what's going on in the technology field. So it's same to me, and basically when I start to work on my dissertation, I look for topics that are hot back then, and my first project started with MySpace, which unfortunately, as of today, MySpace is no longer that important. But we started the project in 2008, so basically my second PhD study here at Purdue. And it took 7 years to get this paper published eventually, and unfortunately it got published. So it's the purpose of this study is to look at the phenomenon of IT-enabled broadcasting in social media. So when we talk about the broadcasting, we think about those traditional media, traditional channels like radio, TV, so that you can broadcast information to many people, many nodes at the same time. But the constraints of those traditional broadcasting is that it's not two-way, it's mostly one way, right? But then we have social media, and technology enables individuals like us to be able to be an information publisher. And a lot of things happening in social media is also two-way, so that there is more interaction between two sides. So the main contribution of the first essay is to quantify the economic impact of social media marketing by broadcasting marketing messages. And the context we use is music artists. And in terms of the methodology, we use the panel vector autoregression model. And so that's the first study. It started early, but it got published later. And the second study is in the financial market. It's also about social media, and specifically we talk about the wisdom crowds on the social media. The data was collected from Seeking Alpha, which is one of the major financial blog websites for investors to connect with each other, share their investment ideas. And a lot of those articles written on this platform is similar to what professional financial analysts wrote. So we call it a competition between expert opinion, which are the traditional professional financial analyst opinion, versus the crowd, so which is happening on social media. That any investor, most of them are amateur investors, and they can do this, we call it a DIY, do-it-yourself financial analysis, and share their views about a stock. And the purpose of our study is to show that those opinions reviewed on social media are actually value relevant, which means that they can help predict price movements in the stock market. And so this is this is a interesting study, and as you can see that my dissertation is interdisciplinary. The first one is related with marketing. The second one is related with social media. And I would say that with Prabhuda and Jeffrey's mentorship, I think one thing that makes me learn a lot is, especially from with Prabhuda, is that he always asks those very critical questions that as a PhD student back then, even today, I'm quite nervous, to think about how to address Prabhuda Day's question always. So, but although it's tough, to be as his student, but I'm very glad to have had this opportunity to come to Purdue and work with him and Jeffrey. And so this study, the second study now, 5 years later after it's published, we have roughly 500 citations on Google Scholar. And when it was published, we got a lot of media coverage from Wall Street Journal and Forbes, all those major media outlets. So I think, it's of course it's also collaborated with the finance faculty here, Bian Huang, who was working here at Purdue. So that's a quick overview of my dissertation, and it's on social media. And after I left Purdue, and I continued to work on this field, and so the topic, the paper I present today is about the social executive, and it's a joint work with Bian Huang and Tony Liu. So Bai Xiaoliu, so he is also a PhD student in finance from Purdue, and he's currently at Florida State University. So about this paper, so it's the phenomenon of a social executive. We kind of term it social executive. One example is Elon Musk. So last year, he sent a tweet which cost about $40 million US. So because of this tweet, his company Tesla got fined $20 million US, and also he personally also paid a fine of $20 million US because he said something that could potentially hurt his shareholders, and so SEC got involved. And even earlier example is about the Netflix CEO. So he sent a message on Facebook in 2012 saying that Netflix the users are spending about 1 billion hours per month, and that information is actually not new. When the CEO tweeted sent this information on Facebook, it was not a new information, but it has been mentioned in company blogs before. But the stock price still jumped 6% that day, and a few months later, SEC kind of looked into this issue and tried to investigate whether Tesla, Netflix CEO potentially is violating the regulation fair disclosure. But in April 2013, the SEC kind of blessed the use of the social media sites to broadcasting market moving news. So basically, after 2013, public firms now can use social media. So basically, social media now is an official channel for public firms to announce news, publish information, as long as the firms that notify their investors that they will use this channel to broadcast. And that development is partially attributed to this event, because with this event, SEC get involved. And so I just want to use those two examples to illustrate the idea that social media originally started as a tool for individuals, right? For us to get online, to socialize with our friends, classmates, etc. Or somebody that we may saw like 10 years ago and we got reconnected, right? But the social media, it has been more than 10 years or 15 years, and the technology diffuse, right? And it's not just individual use, there's also corporate use. And a lot of, like my first essay in the dissertation is about social media marketing. So a lot of firms using social media to do marketing, right? So that's kind of one natural use of social media. But the study I present here about social executive is saying that even the most senior people among those in those public firms, like those CEOs, CFOs, they are very busy, right? But they are also starting to adopt social media to use this tool to connect with their customers, investors, partners, suppliers, even employees. And the context we choose is Twitter. So I want to first give you some more concrete idea of what kind of information those executives will talk about on Twitter. And we kind of classify those tweets into three types of contents. The first one is company news, right? So which is very natural that they announce some news. And those news may not be shared in other channels, okay? Some of them are announced in other traditional channels, but some of them may be like novel, very like new information that was not available in any other channel when it was disclosed. The second type is work-related tweets. So those work-related tweets talk about the daily activities of those CEOs or CFOs. So they talk about what kind of things they do at work, like what kind of meetings they have, and their feelings about or their emotions about work. Like sometimes they get stressed or even depressed. There's one example I will show later. So those like work-related information is actually could potentially be value relevant, okay, potentially. And the last type is it's just as what we do on Twitter, like we share a lot of individual interests, something that's not related with work, right? Something about family, friends, etc. So I will give you some more examples so that you have a better idea of what I'm talking about. So this is CEO of Unisys, so it's just a tweet is very short, right? So it's only 140 characters. So this one is announcing a company news, and they have a link in the tweet. And this is the CEO of GE, so announce some deal. Again, company news. And the ex-CEO of Google, so I predict big things happening today. We are already fast about to get faster, It doesn't have a lot of concrete information, right? But it's work related. It's talking about, we have a lot of things going on in Google, right? And the sentiment seems to be very positive, right? Although we may not get exactly what's going on just simply by looking at those tweets, but the sentiment seems to be positive. And see here, just finish a meeting, with a lot of good ideas, right? So again, it's about work related. So earnings call, before earnings call, the CEO get on Twitter and send a tweet, right? It seems to suggest that the fact that the CEO has time to tweet before the earnings conference call might suggest that, okay, this quarter is not so bad, right? So the CEO has mood. Could be that case, right? And you see here, this is more depressed or upset than you have been in years. Try running an airline, right? So this is talking about something that may not necessarily be very positive. And And then there's also something that's not related with work at all, right? So very disappointed that there will be no season 9 of 24, right? So 24 is a very, very popular TV show, and so the CEO talked about TV shows, and here it's about some family time, right? And well, I mean, if suppose say, I guess here is just a congestion. If the company is not doing so good, probably CEOs will not broadcast that they are having a vacation, right, on Twitter. So they have to be sensitive about those. And as I will show you later on, although we call it social executive, it's still not a phenomenon that's widely applied to all those public firms. Only a small portion of public firms now have social executive or social CEOs, and I think the reason is that there's a lot of PR issues related with CEOs getting on Twitter to talk about things about the firms without being checked by the legal team. So there's concerns about this using like adoption. And my research, I think one of the contributions of my research is showing that the positive effects of benefits of social executive, and we try to provide some like not only like managerial but also actually regulatory implications that we should encourage firms to their CEOs or executives to come out and share information on social media, and that's actually going to help the company, as I will show you. Yeah.
The type 1 tweet, how do you know it's actually the CEO who's tweeting?
Oh, yeah. So that's a very good point. So all those accounts are personal Twitter accounts of those CEOs.
Sure, you could still have the.
Yeah. We don't know whether it's the personal CEO actually sending out the.
Especially the type 1 tweet.
Yeah. It's possible. So. But we look at the time distribution of the tweets, right? So although for each individual tweet, we do not know whether this is sent by the CEO, him or herself, but we do see a lot of tweets are sent out in non-work hours, okay?
That can be also through an API schedule, right?
It could be, but a lot of those events are real time. So I think, well, nowadays we have AI, so so they may catch those information, but back then, a lot of those events are real. Like it's happening, and then there's very fast. So I mean, if you look at Elon Musk is an extreme example, but if you look at his tweets, I think a lot of those tweets are written by himself, right? So but for other companies, yes, we don't know. But I think because the firms, they also have official Twitter accounts. The firm account. This is the data we definitely control for the firm accounts, and our main focus is on the individual personal accounts. Yeah.
Sorry. So are these tweets strategic? In other words, if you look at the tweets being sent by these people, do they have some sort of market effect? Because some people tweet just to get the word,
Yeah.
Other people are just purely using it in a really strategic way. Sometimes it is, regardless of what people say about Elon Musk, it's very strategic to divert attention away from bad news. There's some chaos that happens. There's another person we haven't talked about here who tweets a lot, but
Yeah. So there are two things about your question. So first thing is that it does have market impact. Yeah. And as I will show you, it has short-term impact and also long-term. Short-term is that some of the tweets do have impact on the price and the return. Relatively longer term is about the earnings surprise, which means that those tweets actually do contain value-relevant information, so they can predict earnings surprise. So it's called earnings surprise because basically there's analyst mean average estimation, and the surprise is that when the company outperforms the estimate or underperforms, but the analysts have not been able to capture it. And the information on Twitter here is able to, because it can predict those surprise, which means that those informations are value relevant that have not been incorporated by analysts. Yeah.
So you can trade based on tweets now?
Yeah. Not only like a social executive and even a lot of individual investors. Yeah. So there have been research done on that. And the second point about your question is that a company strategic or not? Yes. There's also another research done in accounting showing that firms, they strategically manipulate like what kind of tweets they send out. And then when there's good news, they say more, and when there's bad news, they say less. So basically, yeah. I mean, why does this make a difference? Okay, it's kind of an interesting phenomenon. I mean, but I want to give you a little more background of the financial market and how it works and why social. Yeah.
2013.
Yeah.
So are these tweets now allowed without informing investors? Analysts and others.
Mm-hmm.
Are these kinds of tweets allowed, especially the one like I'm doing, it's 1 hour before I'm going to a conference call. I think the SEC put some conditions.
Yeah. So basically, SEs say, as I said, that firms, public firms, now you can use social media to reveal like market moving information, as long as you already notify those investors. So now in the annual reports or the quarterly financial reports, if you read those reports, you will find out that firms list out their social media channels. Basically, that's one means to notify investors that we're going to use those channels to release the market moving information. And if that's done, then it's legal. Yeah.
But they could have had a private meeting prior to that, before tweeting, is that it?
Yeah. So
social analysts or something? Is that
yes. So that's what I'm gonna talk about. Private meetings. Yeah. So first, before private meeting, my next slide. So I want to talk about like the communication between firm management and investors. Okay. So first one is CEO getting on TV. Okay, the CNBC, and there have been research done that among those CEOs that have ever appeared at least once on CNBC, the number of times they appear on TV is only 0.82 times a year. So that means CEOs do not get invited on CNBC a lot, especially for those smaller firms. And even hearing directly from public firms, like when public firms release a news, it's not that frequent, okay? And so there are 4 quarterly annual reports, for sure. And there's the 8K forms. Those 8K forms are some very material events that firms has to release. So basically, they have to file a document with SEC. It's only 4 on average per firm, okay? And firms issues only 24 press releases. Those 24 press releases would include those, like say, earnings announcement and 8K forms too, because they are included. So as you can see that firms, especially those smaller firms, they do not release news every day, okay? And investors, so that's what we talk about the information environment of public firms, right? A lot of the public firms, like Apple, yes, it's one of the most popular firms that people talk about. So you get a lot of information. But those are the extreme end, very popular firms. There are also a lot of unpopular firms who do not have a lot of information to share, actually. And the investors do not get a lot of information about those firms. And the information environment of those firms is not so good. And but the social executive can make a difference in the sense that firm management now can proactively, get on social media and try to, establish connection with investors. And a statistic here is like back in 2014, social executive in our data samples on average post 60 work-related tweets in 1 year, right? So that means that they share a lot more about what's going on with the firm. And because of this information sharing, I think we believe that it helps improve the information environment of the firm.
So given what you just said, Hailiang, I'm a little curious. So with the 60 average tweets, what's the median? I mean, is this 60 by Elon Musk and a few people driving it, or?
Yeah. So our sample is not that big. So it's only like a few 150 firms out, and there are like 3,000 or 4,000 public firms. So the adoption rate is low, and we do see a heterogeneity. Yeah. So I forgot the median, but yes, you are right. So there are some firms. Later on, I have a few slides to show you the distribution. Yeah. But I think for those who already adopted it. You know, some of the CEOs are quite active. Yeah. We do have some that are not that.
There's self-selection going on, I think, where Christian was going earlier, right? So it's basically these very successful farms, right, where they know how to strategically move the investors. The investors themselves are probably also different, right? So you probably have, these are not institutional targets, or these may be institutional targets rather than retail target farms. And so
so that's the identification challenge. So we have a natural experiment to use the SEC embrace of social media, and because that's an exogenous event, and we use that to do a DID and a natural experiment. Basically, among those firms that have already adopted social media prior to that event, so we look at within this subsample of social executive, and we show that. Those firms, they have incremental benefits in improvement in the information environment. So that's yes. So it's an endogeneity issue, and we, in addition to control for a lot of other things. Later on, I will show you the data set we collect, and we use that natural experiment to try to address the endogeneity issue. Okay, so the next is about the personal meeting. So before social media, okay, there are a lot of communications between CEO and investor, but those are mainly institutional investors, and they have to pay a lot of money. Like investment banks, they get connect to those firms, and it's 1.5 billion a year for access to those private meetings, and every year, on average, a firm has 153 private meetings. Okay. And 90 of them with the CEO or top executive taking part into it. So this means that it's not like there's no information shared. There's a lot of information shared, but there's heterogeneity in terms of access, right? So institutional investors, they have to pay to get access to those top executives, and it's quite frequent. But the retail investors or those even smaller institutional investors may not have the equal access. And then that's why, we say that the social executive is an interesting phenomenon that could potentially make an impact. Is that any investor can follow those executives on Twitter, and Twitter is a public platform, So yeah.
So just a clarification question. So you have been using this term executives, but do you define who the executive is? Is it just the CEOs? Because
so here we talk about top executives like those.
Because the reason why I ask is for many companies, their CTOs and product officers. I mean, they are the stars.
Yes.
Especially for the tech.
Yes. So we although our data set does not include that, but we as a social executive concept do include them. So our data is mainly focused on CEO and CFO. The reason for that is we have about 2,000 firms, I think. We focus SP 1,500 firms. So actually not like, I think 3,000 or something, because each firm has CEO and CFO, and it's 1,500, more than 3,000. And we have to manually search for the accounts. Because of that, so we didn't look at CMO, CTO, but that's a data limitation here. And so the power of social media is that it's democratized the investor access. So now with social media, firms, as long as the firms adopt this channel, now every investor, not only just institutional investors, even those retail investors, they now have the opportunity to at least get information from those top executives. And I think, so that's why we think this is something that could potentially have a huge impact on the market. And basically, to show this, we have two hypotheses. And the first hypothesis is to first establish the fact that those tweets do contain value-relevant information, and they can predict earnings surprise, right? And so that's the first hypothesis. And the second hypothesis is, which is our main hypothesis, is that we want to show that social executives can improve firms' information environment. And how to measure that in the financial market, we can look at it like the bid-ask spreads. You see, for those large companies, like say Apple, Microsoft, the bid-ask spread is very small, like typically just 1 cent, right? So it's very close. But for a lot of those smaller firms, the bid-ask spread can be huge, sometimes can be even $1, right? So, and basically, bid-ask spread can be a measure of information environment. And here we show that social executive can decrease this spread. And another measure, market liquidity measure, is turnover. So basically, share turnover. We also show that the share turnover also increase. And the third measure is the investor base. So basically, the number of shareholders. And we show that the emergence of social executive leads to better market liquidity.
Sorry, how is this consistent with the efficient market hypothesis?
Well, market, a lot of those behavior research shows that the market is not efficient. So we would say that this is evidence to suggest that the market is not efficient.
The old man.
So, but there are a lot of now there are a lot of behavior finance.
Well, I guess building on what Anand just said, right? Yes, there is that research, but there is also discussion about these noise traders, right? So the noise traders actually sort of support the idea of efficiency hypothesis finally, right? So you have the noise traders. So like, so maybe these executives are self-selecting to really manipulate the noise traders.
Well, I mean, so that again, that's the endogeneity issue. We do agree that a lot of those executives, firms may have some change in strategy, let's say in terms of marketing to reach out, right? And we try to control a lot of those things. And you see here, we control for firms' tweets, right? So because firms, they can have official accounts. We control firms' Facebook posts. We control news, and we control like Silicon Alpha, basically social media information, and then we have that natural experiment. Try to we cannot definitely say this is causality, but we have tried a lot of things to show that to provide a hint that this could be causal. And so as I said, that we got like 155 social executives for 141, and. So you see that there's an increasing trend that social executive is becoming, more. There are more and more executives adopting this channel. It's CEOs majority and also males majority, the main portion, and it covers almost all industry. And we have more observations from the technology industry. So those technology industry are early adopters. And so here, first the hypothesis, we try to show that the tweets can predict earnings surprise, which is to show that those information are value relevant. Okay, and so here, so the first column is to show overall that there's a value, and the second column here is we want to split this into three types, right? So because we have the classification, and the insight here we discover is that the work-related tweets is basically the effect mainly come from the work-related tweets. But that's because we have a lot of control variables. If we do not control for, say, firms, news, etc., the type 1 tweets are also significant. So that shows that okay, the firm, the company news tweets, they are value relevant, but they may not be unique, basically. And personal tweets do not predict earnings surprise. So, and the third column is to compare before the SEC event and after. And after that, we see a stronger effect. And then now it's the second hypothesis is to look at how this phenomenon affects the market liquidity. And we have propensity score matching and also DID design. So basically, we find those firms that do not have a social executive, but they share similar characteristics with those firms that have a social executives. And then we look at those treated firms, basically those who have social executives, and compare it with the control group. And then our hypothesis is that the market liquidity improve for those treated group. And again, we have a lot of control variables, and so this is the main result. So basically, we have four dependent variables: the spread, depth, turnover, and investors. So depth is also related with the bid-ask spread, but it considers the dollar amount that's available in trading. But it's again another market liquidity measure. Essentially, those results show that our hypothesis 2 is also supported. And then we have, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, so just to support what you just showed the previous slide, right? Have you thought about just figuring out whether or not these are institutional targets versus retail targets? Because if what you're saying is happening, right, the spread decreasing, right? So the spread should decrease mostly for the retail target firms, right? Because in finance they have this way of separating the institutional target from retail. So then this effect will be more amplified.
Yes, we did look into this shareholder, like retail shareholder, right? And in trading turnover, you can also potentially look at the tradings that are coming from an institution, and we do have that results, but we hesitated to put it in because we just go back and forth, and we submitted this paper to MSQ and got rejected in third round, and because one reviewer is not happy about that retail versus institution, so. I think the reason for that is we don't have additional analysis to establish causality on that front. So we kind of will take a step back and do not claim that part.
But that would be your support for the mechanism. Your support.
Yeah, we have the result, and the results are consistent with what we hypothesize. But unfortunately, we don't have a strong causal identification.
Go back to the previous slide.
Yeah.
This one. So you have this natural experiment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any way of telling if this is only only limited to the CEOs and CFOs making this decision, or if it's part of a bigger marketing strategy? One of the firm has kind of made this big change, and this is part of that big change.
Yes. So that's the key kind of endogeneity concern. Basically, the firm says, okay, let's get social, right? And then CEO, you should do something, right? Yes. So that's the key concern, and we try to control for firms' official Twitter accounts, right? Because if the firm's strategy change, that should be reflected in the Twitter and also Facebook. We also collect data. So I mean, it's tedious to collect those data, but after we collect control for those, one reviewer still are not so happy. But we kind of try to do what's possible out there. But we have a lot of control variables here. So basically, all the data you can get from social media or traditional resources. Yeah.
Percentage of negative posts. I mean, companies even post negative.
Oh, so here it's negative words. Basically, we measure the sentiment by the fraction of negative words in tweets. So that's not the percentage of negative. Yeah. So it's the fraction of negative words, a sentiment measure. And basically, in the finance literature, they use that as a sentiment measure. And basically, if you have less negative words, it's more positive. Yeah. So we try to use a sentiment.
YIT again is the regressions. Yeah. What is that again?
Which one?
YIT.
Oh, Y. Oh, Y is the dependent variable here.
Yeah, that is
the market liquidity measures. We have a big bid-ask spread,
right?
Yeah.
So you said you had 160 firms.
Yeah,
in your data
roughly 40.
So
Yeah.
can you say a little bit about what the distribution is of those firms in terms of being in the tail of the distribution versus the head of the distribution, vis-a-vis the size of the firm?
Yeah, so the average market cap, if I remember correctly, is 20 billion actually. So it's that's because there's a few large firms, but so we have this.
Now, in particular, I guess I'm interested in the case of these quote unquote. You set up the case for saying the smaller firms that they're not as visible, and using this type of approach allows them to get access to either retail or institutional investors.
Yes.
And I guess the challenge I have as I think about this is just because you tweet, following tweets is also there's a lot of noise out there. So for you to actually follow these firms, you actually have to follow them, or you have to have appropriate technology to support you. So is there enough in your data set to say that the bid-ask spreads change for firms that are in the tail of the distribution in terms of size? If they were treated in this way?
Yeah, so we did a model reading analysis, try to look at the firm characteristics, and it's consistent with our conjecture that for smaller firms, the impact is larger. So essentially, social executive will help those smaller firms more than those bigger firms, because the bigger firms, they have a lot of information already available for those firms. And having a social executive does not help as much as for those smaller firms.
But I didn't see all your variables. Was there? Did you also look at? You're looking at the supply side of, people tweeting. Did you also look at the follower network of these?
Yeah. So we also have a model to look at that to compare across firms that have more followers, like those executive one more followers, and also for those tweets that have more retweets. Yeah. So those are basically the consumption side. And the supply side is that we also compare across firms who tweets more, and also whose tweets has higher fraction of those work-related tweets. Yeah. So basically, we look at both consumption and the supply side, look at the modeling results, and they are all consistent with, yeah. So for the sake of time, I didn't show those results, but I only show those the key main hypotheses. But yeah. So I think I'm kind of run out of time, and I just want to say, so basically this SEC embracement is the natural experiment we do, try to show a causal evidence, because a lot of those so far, some people may not say PSM, propensity score matching, can establish causality, so that's why we try to do this natural experiment. And so let me just quickly summarize this study. And basically, we show that social executives, when firms have been starting to tweet for those CEOs, the CFOs, we observe that those tweets are value relevant, first. And second is that it helps improve the information environment of those public firms, basically, as reflected in that the bid-ask spread decrease and the number of shareholders increase. And we think this has very important managerial and regulatory implications. Basically, it shows that Twitter or social media is helpful for firms. And despite a lot of concerns, firm management may have regarding the use of social media, right? So there's potential risk. But our studies try to show that, document that there's some benefits, tangible benefits that firms can leverage. And so that's, yeah.
Quick question. So in this period of 160 firms in 5 years, was there any turnover in CEOs or CFOs? I'm assuming that didn't make a change.
Yeah.
You have those also, and see if the nature of the tweets from the CEOs.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So basically, when we collect this data, we limit to those samples when CEO is in office and the initiative. Yeah, but the next CEO may not adopt Twitter. Yeah, so. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Hailiang.